The first speaker is Li Tsai, who I happily can note is the co-director of CREST. And again, from a self-revelation perspective, he has infused me with enthusiasm because he has proved to me that I can still learn at this age, and since he has been involved with us over the last 3 years or more, he has taught us all an enormous amount. Today, Lee is going to be talking about the National Assessment of Educational Quality in China. Originally, we had anticipated that Xindao, who leads that center in China and was Kumi Tatsuoka's student, would be here to speak, but at the very last minute, he was unable to come. Gratefully for us, Lee has been a key consultant to their project, so he knows quite a bit about it. So Lee, please.
Thank you, Eva. And my pleasure to be here. And so try to imagine that I am actually Professor Xing Tao. I have about 15 minutes. The professor sent me quite a bit of slides. I'll try to get through some of them, but hopefully leave some room for discussions. So finally, after many years of development, China finally reached its stated goal of funding compulsory 9-year compulsory education at the 4% government expenditure level. So with that, and with a variety of demographic, economic, and political factors, the equality and access, these basic questions have become major concerns. So one, of course, is talking about access to resources and schools for all of the kids, and the other is how to improve the quality. And the other very interesting concern is that with the passage of these national medium to long-term plans for educational development, the establishment of the NAEQ, the National Assessment of Education Quality Center at the Beijing Normal University, is also instigating the development of the field of educational assessment, educational evaluation, and psychometrics specifically in China. It's charged with a very broad mission to formulate standards, to look at development of tools, to actually administer the assessments that are developed out of these standards, or under these standards, to monitor the quality of basic education from first grade to up to 9th grade nationwide. And the first piece of work that they started doing is really this very much NAEP-inspired large-scale assessment. You can see that NAEQ and NAEP, they're really only different by one letter. But the conceptual framework of the two remain rather different. So here is, this is an example. This is the adopted assessment domains for 4th grade and 8th grade. Of course, 4th grade, for a variety of reasons, that was chosen as the earliest focus of NAEP, and then followed on by 8th grade. But of course, we also have high school assessments here. There, since the compulsory education only goes up to 9th grade, this is just going to be 4th and 8th. So there are ethics and civic attainment as one of the domains. Physical and mental health. This is very interesting. They actually have not only questionnaire type of assessments, self-reports, teacher reports, but they actually have assessments that would say make students do long jump, make students run for 100 meters, and then record the actual timing, so that becomes part of the verification data sets. Academic achievement, of course, we'll talk a little bit more about it. Art, creativity, and other kinds of social and educational environment. The domain, so if you think about the difference between NAEQ and many other large-scale and well-known and well-constructed large-scale assessments, under the academic, these are all in Chinese. I'll read from the top. So there is the There is, obviously, the first one is ethics, and then there's under academics, there will be reading, writing, mathematics, science, history and society, and English. If you look at just within the academic domains, NAEQ does cover quite a bit more than many of these other international comparative assessments or national assessments, such as NAEP. Of course, the mental health and physical health, those are completely new domains, so it was very interesting to see what kind of a framework that they could come up with and the implementation of those assessments. Art is something very interesting that I think that they did it principally as modeling after the success of NAEP. And some of these are the background questionnaires that would be administered as part of the assessment to students, to their instructors, to their school principals, and others who are in charge of the local education agencies. Background information about the students, access to resources, environment in general, curricula and instruction, management of schools, status of teachers, family background, their interests, their strategies, and so on and so forth, motivation, those sort of factors. The methodological issues are, of course, many. There is, of course, first you have to get agreement on the assessment framework, and then there are the development of these instruments, sampling design, setting performance standards. Many of these things that we have come to know about through other large-scale assessment development projects are again repeated in the development of NAEQ with modern psychometrics that empower PISA or NAEP becoming one of the key drivers of their success. So this is, for example, for one of the domains, math. There are the cognition factors that they consider measuring, and then there are the content factors that they consider measuring for fourth grade, and these are for 8th grade. So there's a cognitive dimension about knowing and understanding and applying, going all the way up, and then there's the inquiry dimension. There are, of course, the life sciences, physical science, and earth and space sciences in terms of the content domain. And mental health, there are the emotional aspects, social behaviors, self-respect, self-efficacy, self-control, interpersonal skills, value systems. And the test, of course, with such a big domain, and they also do rotation, just like PISA. PISA, every 3 years, they focus on one particular content area. In this case, it's also the same. But even with that, they would have to conduct this assessment when it's implemented using matrix sampling. And there are booklets and balancing complete blocks type of tryouts, and the students take one of the booklets, and then there are multi-stage samples. So this is just one of the examples. That this is in 2009 when they administered the 8th grade items. That they have there's a distribution of multiple choice questions versus constructed response questions, and then in terms of the Chinese items, there's also substantial, at least for their first round, fairly substantial amount of constructed, less constrained response type of items. And questionnaires for students are administered as part of this, as I already mentioned. One thing that, of course, is going to be interesting is as all of these assessments, PISA, for example, begin to include more background information, all of a sudden you run into the situation of you may have to also divide up the background questionnaires into booklets and rotate them at the same time as you rotate the outcomes measures. But that brings about its own set of very interesting statistical considerations. So I'll skip over that and jump straight into sampling design. What they used, which is a little bit different from, very similar to what we do here, but it's rather different from PISA, is that they first do a stratification by region. So there's this map of China. There's the northeast, the northern China, southwest, Northwest and East China, Central and Central South, and Southern China. They first stratify, and then they conduct a 3-stage sampling. So starting from the pilot year in 2007, which is sort of the year when Eva and I began to be involved in this project, you could see that they've gone through iterations and they've tried out many different things, going from 3 provinces as tryouts all the way to 2012 and 2013 that they had coverage in all of those provinces, and they're refining their methods, refining their frameworks in this process. Setting the performance standards, you have bookmark methods, handcuff methods. Those of you here are familiar with those, you'll probably chuckle. Let me show you some results, as I only have a little bit of time left. So this is 4th grade Chinese. They divide after standard setting, they divide the scale scores into levels 1 through 4, a little bit similar as Smarter Balanced. So let me just show you the distribution of levels 1 through level 4 for students in urban settings, smaller cities, mostly rural areas and rural areas. And you could see that there is quite a bit of variation depending on where the students come from. This is one of the things that people knew about, but never has been documented so clearly with this level of precision. And also, if you look among the counties, so in China, counties are the fundamental administrative units under a province. So the counties, some of the best ones, let's say probably in East China or near Beijing or Shanghai, those places where if you look at students who are level 1, there are almost nobody performing at level 1. And most of the students are at levels 3 or above. But if you look at the counties that are performing the worst, there are students that are, 88% of them are performing at level 1. And that's, again, something that people sort of knew about, but this has never really been documented. If you decompose the variation using, say, a multi-level model, look at the student achievement outcomes, at 4th grade, the students accounted for about 61% of the variance. In 8th grade, they account for about 64%, with the rest going to 12% to schools and 27% to counties, which is as expected and pretty similar to what some of the other large-scale assessments would show. Interesting question. So, number of hours that the students sleep was one of the questions. Turns out that for 8th graders, they sleep less than 9 hours a day, and that's 63% of them. And then access to equipment in order to conduct life science or physical science classes. You could see that there are quite a few of them that really never had access to experimentation. Some of this is due to access resource issues. Some of these are due to lack of access to qualified teachers. And there's also interesting things you could do with comparisons of the curricula. You could, the green dots are what's expected. These like standards from math. And you could compare that with high achieving countries as found by TIMSS. So those are the purple ones to the right. You can see that the things that the students are expected to know are far larger than some of the other high-achieving countries, such as Singapore or Japan. And that's another interesting thing for the curriculum and the instruction people to figure out. So thank you. I hope that you've found something useful out of this peek at the early results from NAEQ.